coalition of charities and experts campaigning for more help for young unemployed people. Sam Windet, how badly do you think young people will be hit by the downturn?
Hi Paul, good to speak to you. Yeah, in recessions we know that young people do tend to fare the worst. In previous recessions that's been the case, but in this particular instance we know that actually young people are going to be worse hit than even previously, because they tend to work in those shut down sectors, hospitality, retail, and all the evidence is saying at the moment actually they're 2.5 times more likely to work in those sectors that are shutting down. So actually they're more likely to be hard hit. We know between March and May this year, actually the number of young people claiming benefits doubled. So that's just an early indication of what we're seeing out there.
Yes,
and recent analysis from IPPR sort of showed that they're even thinking that the total of unemployed young people could be over 1 million by the end of the year.
Right, and Resolution Foundation says it could increase youth unemployment by 600,000, so they're all in the same direction. Just briefly, what will the Chancellor's Kickstart plan offer?
So the Kickstart scheme is going to offer a 6-month work placement, which is a wage subsidy for those young people. So they're going to receive a wage, a national minimum wage, and it's actually targeted at those young people who are at most risk of being long-term unemployed. So those who are sort of furthest away from the labour market and need that support.
Well, stay with us, Sam, but let's hear now from 21-year-old Poppy Campbell-Gillick, who worked in hospitality but lost her job after the lockdown began, and 20-year-old Atasha Francis, who works in retail and is on furlough, but she fears she might lose her job. If that happens, would she go for the Kickstart scheme?
Yes, I would, but then I would consider what I would do after, because obviously 6 months is not forever, so it's to think, okay, where is this going to get me? What is this going to help me with, and what is my plan to do after the 6 months is over?
And Poppy, you're on universal credit, so you could apply for this, but you have to be on universal credit, don't you? Is it something you'll consider when it begins?
Of course, I think the Chancellor's statement about introducing more career advisors to the scheme sounds very promising. The opportunity to speak to a career advisor is something I didn't really have at school. They pushed us to go to university rather than actual work.
And Atasha, what do you see it giving you if you joined it?
I feel like it will definitely give me a lot of confidence. Teamwork, definitely. It will definitely give you more experience.
So you both seem fairly positive about it, as long as it does what you want. Let me ask you specifically, Atasha, do you feel that your friends have been affected by the coronavirus crisis?
Yeah, I do feel like they have been affected, especially because a lot of us are on furlough as well. They live by themselves, things like that, so they do have things that they need to focus on or prioritise money-wise as well. Some people have kids, a lot of people have lost their jobs, so it is quite stressful at this time.
And Poppy, tell me about your future. How hopeful are you for your future now?
I'm hopeful to have discussion with one of the career advisors regarding opportunities for me. The difficulty of being in your 20s is you feel like you have to do a lot and achieve a lot, but you don't actually know what is right for you.
And Atasha, hopeful?
Yes, I'm fairly hopeful. My job they've given me a bit of a positive outlook on going back and having our job secured, but obviously we're not sure. Like, we didn't expect to be on lockdown for this long either, so it's sort of a 50-50 feeling there. It's very unsettling.
Atasha Francis and Poppy Campbell-Gillick. Well, Sam Windet from the Youth Employment Group, it is an unsettling time for young people. What do you think of their views of Kickstart?
Yeah, it's really unsettling, and funnily enough, Poppy and Acacia's views do mirror those of other young people I've spoken to this week. I spoke to Opiyemi and Salerna from the EY Foundation yesterday, and they were saying one of the issues is, the 50-50 is about right, because motivation is a problem, but at least that there are schemes being offered now, and they're hearing something hopeful for them. And I think that's really important, to have something that they think might help the careers advice. As Poppy said, there's more money going into careers advice as well, so hopefully some of these schemes will be beneficial for them.
Yes, I mean, your youth employment group had been calling for youth guarantee, hadn't it, where every school leaver has a place in education, apprenticeship or a job. It's very tiny compared with that.
We were calling for a youth guarantee. Well, funny enough, actually, people have heard about this Kickstarter scheme, but there were a lot of other bits announced on Wednesday which weren't so picked up. Expanding sector-based work academies, which is a great route for young people. Also, incentives for employers to take on apprentices, traineeships, and more youth offer for young people. So actually, it was quite a pretty decent package. It's been well received. I think that the real difficulty is to be doing these things at speed and getting them right, because not all the details of this have been worked out by the government, and the Youth Employment Group and others are here to help them think about those details to get it right for those young people that need it.
And I'm sure there are some people listening who are thinking, oh, ultimately taxpayers will pay for this, probably a taste from Poppy. Is £2.1 billion value for money, briefly?
Yeah, when you think about it, the alternatives, thinking about Poppy and Acacia and sitting at home and wondering what they're going to do, this is absolutely the best value for money we can spend. It's preventing them becoming long-term unemployed, which actually can impact their earning for life and can impact their health and their mental well-being. But it's also enabling them to contribute to our economy and our economic recovery, which is the best spend of money I think is out there.
Sam, we don't think. A Kickstart, of course, is just one of the Chancellor's headline-grabbing changes to boost the economy. Our reporter Dan Whitworth has been looking at the rest now.
Well, let's start with his announcement on VAT then, Paul. So, Rishi Sunak has announced a cut in VAT for restaurants, hotels and attractions from 20 to 5%. And that's from the 15th of July right through to the 12th of January. Now, that'll include food and non-alcoholic drinks in pubs and cafes, as well as hot takeaway food. B&Bs, holiday cottages, seasonal caravan sites, theme parks and cinemas will also benefit.
So total prices should fall by 12.5%, £1 in every 8. I wonder if they will. At least one listener, Dan, has said a hotel he's booked is not reducing its prices. But there will definitely be a price cut on some meals, as Chancellor Rishi Sunak told the House of Commons.
And with this measure, we can all eat out to help out.
Oh, cheers there, Dan, but how will it work?
We can sense someone's very pleased with the slogan, at least. What does it mean in practice? Well, Mondays to Wednesdays in August, the government will pay up to 50% of food and non-alcoholic drinks, up to £10 per person, for the whole of the month. It'll apply at any restaurant, pub or cafe which applies to join the scheme, and the Chancellor is promising owners they'll be able to claim back the discount from HMRC via a simple online form. Now, businesses that want to take part must register, and they can do that from Monday.
So that's up to £10 per person off a meal, but what about thousands of tenors off your stamp duty when you buy a home?
Yeah, big changes with this one, Paul. So generally, there'll be no stamp duty on residential properties up to £500,000 in England and Northern Ireland. Now that applies immediately right through to the 31st of March next year. Now that should make around about 9 out of every 10 transactions tax-free. As a result, will cost the Treasury nearly £4 billion. The Scottish Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, has also announced a temporary cut to the transaction tax on house sales. No tax up to £250,000 there, meaning 8 out of 10 house sales in Scotland will be tax-free, and that cut is due to come in, quote, as soon as possible.
Well, thanks, Dan. To look at that temporary stamp duty cut, we're joined now by Kate Forbes, founder of propertychecklists.co.uk and an independent property analyst. Kate Forbes, how much is this cut worth?
Well, it really depends on where you sit. So, I'm in the town of Nottingham, typically the average house cost there around £370, but this is very much home transport as Southern tax, which is quite correct. Most people will pay there on average around £400,000 for property, average family home. So they're looking at anything between £12,000 right up to the £500,000.
Yes, and 15,000 is the maximum for anybody.
Correct.
And it applied, as I was told, from the date of the announcement. So if you completed the day before, the 7th of July, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, well, it actually stated the 8th of July. So for anybody, quite what happened on Wednesday, I don't know, because versus the statement, yes, it should have applied, but on the .gov site, it said the 8th, and normally these come in,
yeah.
I think, I mean, you'll know this better than I, sort of at 00:00
Yes, it came in at midnight
1 minute
on the 8th.
after.
That's right.
Yes,
But if you
yes.
completed the day before, you don't get it. And
Correct.
in England and Northern Ireland, this applies to all homes, first-time buyers, second homes, buy-to-let. Should it have been more targeted?
I would have liked to have seen it more targeted, and to be honest, I would have liked to have seen support for first-time buyers come in first. And it's interesting that Scotland did both, and we haven't done that. So I think that you could, for example, you could have done it just on those people that owned one home, or even a real payback is restricted it potentially to new build,
Yeah.
who really does deliver massive amounts back to the economy.
Yes, and of course, people who are buying a second home, or if they're a buy-to-letter, they still have to pay the 3% surcharge, but that's on top of 0% tax up to 500,000.
Correct. So they're kind of rubbing their hands a little. Not that, mind you, having said that, they've had a lot of tax increases
Yes,
so far. So this is a first in about 10 years, I think.
Buy-to-let. And in Scotland, you mentioned that. What's happening there?
So in Scotland, they normally you can buy up to £145,000 without paying tax, and they're going to raise that to £250,000, and that takes about 80% of people out of paying any stamp duty.
Yeah, so that's a maximum though of only £2,100 off, compared with up to 15,000 in England and Northern Ireland.
Yes, it's a tricky one, but of course you're not including London, and although Edinburgh can be quite pricey, and certain parts of Scotland, as I say, I think the best way to look at this fairly across each of the countries is what percentage come out of stamp duty. So 90% for England, 80% for Scotland, and even though Wales haven't made the change, because theirs is the highest amount, so you can buy up to 180,000 there without paying stamp duty, there's actually 65% of people don't pay it already.
Yes, and Wales hasn't made an announcement yet. They confirmed to me yesterday. Kate Falconer, thanks very much indeed. A day after the Chancellor Rishi Sunak announced that series of measures aimed at saving jobs, two of UK's biggest high street retailers, Boots, announced 5,300 job cuts between them. And that news came amid warnings that the new economic support announced by the Chancellor won't be enough to stop millions of workers losing their jobs when the furlough scheme winds down and then stops at the end of October. Lucy McLean is a partner and head of employment law at Bateswell Solicitors. Lucy McLean, one of the Chancellor's measures was designed to stop firms sacking staff at the end of furlough. How will that work?
So, Paul, this is the job retention bonus scheme, and there'll be two requirements under this new scheme that's been announced. So, a worker who's previously been furloughed and who is still in continuous employment with their employer by the 31st of January next year, and is earning at least the lower earnings limit, which is £520 a month, between November and January next year, will then make their employer eligible to claim £1,000 per worker from the government.
Is that enough to make them keep them on?
Well, sadly, I don't think so. Whilst it's obviously a significant investment by the government, it's hard to see that in reality many employers are going to change their future plans and their plans for redundancies simply for the sake of £1,000 next year.
And, I mean, he's budgeted over £9 billion for this measure, which would be the cost if every one of the 9-odd million people on furlough were brought back. But you seem to think that's pretty unlikely.
In my opinion, it's highly unlikely, unfortunately.
Of course, the furlough